Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hello, and we are back again. Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 129, and I am your Trek Lord of West Michigan. They call me Charlie Carden, sometimes to my face anyway. But I'm backed up with Mr. Peter Stein, my regular cohort, who is sporting the very sexy DS9 uniform that gets introduced in our group of DS9 episodes. So, Peter, happy Sunday. How are you?
Doing all right.
Good deal. That's what I like to hear. All righty, right. Well, we will jump right on into it. We are continuing to talk about Star Trek Prodigy, but looking at the calendar, Peter and I decided it would make a little bit more sense, so we're not talking about this for the next 9 months, if we take our 2-episode recap and make it 3. So we're going to talk about episodes 3, 4, and 5, and then we will jump into the next block of talking about Deep Space Nine. But before I do that, as always, it's always time to pay homage to the wonderful folks over on our Secret Friends Unite Patreon. These are the wonderful folks who give us the capacity, the bandwidth, the will to carry on, to create additional programming, such as the show that I have called The Facts of Geek Life, where myself and a guest, in this case, Peter, we snag a show, we take a season of it, and then we break down a handful of episodes. Peter and I have been coasting our way through Ron Moore's reimagined Battlestar Galactica from the early 2000s. We're about to complete season 2, and it's a lot of fun. The great news is that if you visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, you can try the service for 1 week for free. And then if you like it, you end up sticking around. In addition to the additional content I talked about, there are ad-free versions of all of our regular podcasts. And this show in particular, which does not contain ads, does drop 24 hours earlier if you are a Patreon. So if you love what we talk about so much and you just can't wait, you're going to get that nice perk. But like I said, you also get a lot of fun extra content. Over on our Friends with Benefits level, Corey in HD, John Sedorf, Brendan Myers, the fantastic Phoenix Sisters Entertainment. That's our partner, Kelly, frequent contributor to the show, and her business partner, Crayley, and Matthew Keel, BFFs, the top tier folks, the awesome Nias family of the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry. We are very grateful for everything that you guys make possible. So keep on listening. And again, if you're listening to this on the free feed, want to see what the fuss is all about, patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, and have a good listen. We would love to have you on board. All right, we have an actual news story this week. I love it, and I included this one simply because I've had some interaction on this topic, although I do not happen to be one of the people that funded it, and I kick myself. But when this project was funding, it was the year 2021. I was unemployed. That was no fun. So that really did cut down on my fund money for most stuff. But a great documentary about Star Trek Voyager in the same vein and by the same production team that gave us the fantastic documentary about Deep Space Nine, What You Leave Behind, which we got some years prior, 2018, it says right here. So anyway, the Voyager doc is called To the Journey, which was a line by Harry Kim from the finale, looking to finish its production and air to backers, people who backed the Kickstarter, which unfortunately we didn't. Peter, I don't suppose you were one of those lucky
I
folks.
wasn't one of them.
Yeah, too bad. But anyway, yes, it is looking to be rolled out in an event at the Paramount lot in potentially November. The team also expects to announce dates and locations of other screenings in London, New York during Star Trek Las Vegas, which is coming up in a couple of weeks here. So I love doco stuff. I just this morning finished watching a great documentary about cannon fills in the Golan Globulus, which produced an untold score of corny movies in the 80s. And it was an absolutely fascinating documentary. So I'm really fired up about this. Peter, I know you and I fall into similar slots. We love DS9, we love TNG. And with Voyager, I won't say take it or leave it. I know Todd, for example, can't stand it. But I watched the show from stem to stern. It was like it was a period of my life. I was in college. I was out of college. So Voyager really resonates with me. I've been a huge fan until fairly recently of Robbie and Garrett's podcast, The Delta Flyers. When they finished the series, they started on early DS9 and they kind of lost me. So where do you land with this? How are you feeling about it?
I was kind of paying attention to it, but not like super closely. But I thoroughly enjoyed the Deep Space Nine one, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this.
Yeah.
Especially because of how Voyager worked with that. It was originally not going to be kind of a TNG, and then it kind of ended up being a TNG. So it'll be interesting to see how they talk about like how the show evolved, what was everyone's experience on set,
right?
So yeah, I'm excited. I like behind the scenes stuff. I have all sorts of behind the scenes things about Star Trek. I'm one of those nerds that not just with Star Trek, but with other things. Like growing up, I watched all of the extras for instance, the Lord of the Rings extended editions when those
gotcha.
All of the behind the scenes. I'm all about knowing how things work and why they made what they did. So.
Right.
I'm excited. I'm also curious to see if they're going to up-res any footage like they did for the Deep Space Nine documentary.
I would have to imagine, and that's really helpful. And it's unfortunate that as I'm sure we've mentioned and has been the case for many years. In the early 2010s, TNG and TOS got physical releases. Physical releases were still a thing back then, although they were kind of coming to the end. And Paramount Viacom dumped an untold amount of money into turning those releases into HD quality.
Remasters,
exactly. And this was off the back of the remaster that TOS had in 2006 for the 50th anniversary, where all of your external ship shots and otherwise space stuff was recomposited to look more modern, which there's some people who bitch about it. I think it was absolutely the right choice. I really care for it. So, but the thing is, with all of that money that Viacom spent doing TOS and TNG for a physical release where they could stand to recoup their costs, that environment just doesn't really exist in the streaming world anymore, which is why DS9 and Voyager have really languished in SD. And it's tough. We watched, obviously, episodes of DS9, which we'll talk about later on, that are in standard definition, which are it's very stark when you switch back and forth from watching those other two shows.
The thing about it also is it's not just the fact that they can't recoup the money particularly from doing it. It's because the way that the special effects were made is just very different from how they were done in Next Generation. Next Generation, they could hypothetically find the plates like they did with like the motion picture and just physically recomposite them with a computer.
Right.
Unfortunately, with Deep Space Nine and Voyager, a lot of the specs were really early CGI.
Yeah.
Which was all done on like proprietary machines that you can't replicate anymore. And all the files are missing.
Right.
Because they're just gone. So that's part of the problem is they can't they would have to, like in TOS, it would be as expensive but more because there's 4 more seasons.
Right.
As expensive as TOS.
Right.
Because they would be recreating all of the external shots and all of the internal shots with like Odo.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that may mean that it may never happen. But again, you and I got off on a little bit of a tangent here. So, but with What You Leave Behind, the DS9 doco, they took bits and pieces, and I know there was a running joke at the beginning of that where Andy Robbins comes on and says, "Well, I promise you some footage recomposited, but first I'm going to do this speech," and it was funny. But we did get some stuff from the Sacrifice of Angels, I think, which was the big battle to retake Deep Space Nine. God bless. Goodness, he's sneezing, but this is what a professional Peter is. He still muted his microphone. I appreciate that. Thank you, Peter. I usually forget because I have this cover on it, so it's remembering to push the button. So I just try to sneeze off camera if I can. But anyway, so we could get some dates for folks who are backers. Potentially someone listening to us is a backer. But you can still pre-order the Blu-ray DVD and additional merch at backerkit.com. Oh, is that a fact? Oh my. I didn't realize that. I thought this was totally off the radar. So I'll have to look at this again. While of course I'm in the process of starting a small business right now. In addition to this, so my funds are sometimes dramatically limited. So I might not be able to, but we'll see. I'll see what I can razzle dazzle. But anyway, this is very exciting. It looked like there could be a physical release and an official world premiere event in 2020. Once they secure a distributor for theatrical release. That would be fantastic. That would be a great chapter event that we could do, that we could all turn out in uniform and stuff. I would absolutely love that. So super cool. Well, as we have more news about this, we will definitely get with you and share that too. So, all right, well, let's move on to talk a little bit about Star Trek Prodigy. And again, I'm kind of bummed out. Aaron, our third contributor, was going to make his return this week, and he is saddled with internet issues this morning, so we are not seeing him.
Comcrash.
Good old Xfinity. You got to make something funny for Xfinity, though. Come on, I know you work in the business. You've got to have something.
I don't have something for Xfinity. I just have Comcrash right now.
Comcrash. All right.
We'll come up with something.
We'll work on that. Maybe Comcrash be the name of this episode. Who's to say? But anyway, we are talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 2. And as I had mentioned last time, this is a bit of a weird one because on July 1st, which is now 3 weeks to the day, almost to the day gone by, the 20 episode second season dropped on Netflix. Netflix being the only... Yeah, boom! Netflix being the only service that has anything Star Trek in their exclusive to holding the reins on the series because of all the shenanigans from last summer during the writer's strike. This was a victim of something that got dropped and added. But you know what? It's okay. We'll hope it'll live there. I probably should find out when or if this is going to be a streaming release for purchase or a physical release, because I do want to own this in case it disappears
Netflix
again.
Tends to do that.
Like,
a lot of like if Paramount does sometimes, Disney does not.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
Netflix often releases their stuff onto physical media.
They're starting to. Some of the Star Wars Disney Plus series are getting releases now, so that is
limited run.
Yeah. I have
if
seen
you look
them.
for them, they're gone now.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, I'm sure you're not too young to remember the concept of the Disney Vault. You know,
I remember.
Right.
Yep.
So this could be...
They put it on all the VHSs. It was like coming out of the Disney Vault.
Right, exactly. This could be something very similar. They're just not calling it that. But anyway, we're going to blast through talking about 3 episodes 3, 4, and 5, because to try to cram 5 or 10 and accomplish this in 4 months, I feel like we wouldn't really give it its stead. So the way that I feel like we break down a live action show, we only talk about 2 at a time when we're talking about it for the first time, as opposed to DS9, which we'll jump into. And because it's older, we're kind of a little bit more rapid fire. So all right, well, Peter, let's kick it off. If you will grab episode 3 for me, give us the summary and then give us our thoughts. We'll do a little back and forth. Go for it.
Episode 3, Who Saves the Saviors? Traveling through the time rift after their unfortunate kerfuffle on board the Infinity, Dal and the crew search for Chakotay on Solum in the future. With the support of her father in the past, Gwen challenge Essentia.
I like that. Peter's goalpost. There we go. That could be moving the goalpost. That could be the name of the episode.
These are the 2 points in time. In the past.
Oh my gosh, how funny! All right, so yeah, break it down for me. How you feeling about this one?
This one's a pretty solid episode. We get a continuation of kind of the shtick that goes into the next episode of Dal not understanding temporal mechanics, which. I like temporal mechanics. I find it funny that he doesn't understand, because that's usually my experience when I try to talk temporal mechanics to anybody.
Right. What?
Enough with the nerd speak. Tell me. Give it to me plain. So, but basically, like, the beginning shot is hilarious where they're all freaking out flying through the time tunnel. Then Michelle's the only one who's like got her head on straight and like
I keep
controlling stuff.
I keep calling her Michelle in my notes because it just rolls off the tongue easier. So she's Star Trek's first Michelle. There we go. And isn't it like Natelle or something? Not Nutella.
It's Majel, Majel, an homage to Majel Barrett.
I like Michelle. I like that, but I like, and thank you for pointing that out because I didn't realize, but I like Michelle better. Michelle is actually my stepmother's name. She's a delightful woman. Oh my gosh. So,
Yeah. And then they
yeah.
crash land on Solum, as typical. And
Oh, damn
break
it.
break the ship again. Pretty
Okay.
standard. They're around there for a bit, and then they get captured by folks on Solum.
No shit.
Because they show up on speeder bikes of all things.
I love
I don't
it.
know what it is with Star Trek and speeder bikes recently, but they have speeder bikes.
The gelling, the more of the series, and I did finally finish it, by the way, but we're going to keep things kind of spoiler free and try
as
to keep
much
things
as possible.
Try to keep things in the context of the episodes we're talking about so that we don't, so that we can act like we're watching it for the first time. Because I know you watched it all right away, and then just like me, you rewatched these episodes so that you could be a little bit more on par with what we're talking about here. So, they're just the Star Wars references in this are cool. To the point, and they're acceptable to the point that they're not annoying. Like we get like
the next episode, there's even more references not to Star Wars, and I'll bring those up because they're funny.
Yes, but we get like the elders back on. I keep forgetting
Solum
the name
of the past.
No, in Gwen's planet where she ends up having the big
it's
fight.
Still Solum, but
right.
The species are the Valnakat.
The Valnakat. Their elders have the masks that cover the eyes, reminding me, of course, of Kanan from Rebels and just the Jedi in general.
The classic Star Wars helmet that covers your eyes, and there's no exact reason for you to be able to see, but somehow you can.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're seeing through the Force. Why not? And that's kind of cool. So it kind of builds a bridge with the Force being awesome. I do love on Solum how when they crash the Infinity, the shuttle, they're still somehow at Vasquez Rocks, which I love. It's a site that I've been to, but that's what the peak looks like where they're at.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, the peaks are similar, but it's just like, oh, hey, look what they did. Well, just like I didn't have any idea about Michelle or Majel. But yeah, it's just, everything is just clicking. Yeah. So they crash. They get captured. They get thrown in a jail cell.
Rig with Chakotay.
Yeah. Or as I rather like to dub it, my favorite radio morning shock jocks, Chakotay and the Birdman, which we've already used as an episode title. So there could be Chakotay and the Birdman Part 2. I don't know. Could be.
Birdman Part 2 Timeline Boogaloo. I don't know.
Oh, new episode title. All right. I'm going to type that in while you keep talking. So what happens then?
Well, first of note, we have to remember that the cadets have decided to ditch their uniforms to make sure that Chakotay doesn't know there was Starfleet.
Right.
Yet still they hide some of their technology on them. And when they are captured, they're stripped of everything that they've got. So they don't have phasers, they don't have tricorders, they don't have Jenkum's arm, which is important.
Right, a little bit. His hand, it's to the wrist.
I mean, it's from the elbow.
And he's got a stub. He's kicking it.
Yeah. So, but they get in and they're like, "Are you trying to escape? Like, what's going on here?" And then you have Zero have the moment of like, "Well, maybe we were always here and we always helped them escape."
Right.
Okay, so
temporal causality loop.
And then
absolutely.
you have Majel say, that actually would make sense. There have been multiple time paradoxes in Starfleet history. And then she lists like the Bell Rides, the Cochrane Warp Flight. And Dahl is just like, I don't know anything about
Knock it off, nerd.
Which is classic.
Yeah, exactly.
So they talk to Chakotay and is it Akeem?
I wrote it down. It's Adric is Birdman's name.
I knew it was an A.
Yeah.
So, but they start talking about like, well, it can't be done. And Jenkum's like, well, I disagree. There's a way to do this. And then we find that what he ends up doing is he hacks in through the tricorder that Adric has secreted about his person somewhere.
Right.
And he controls his arm remotely.
Right. You get kind of
and it's hilarious.
You get Thing from the Addams Family.
Yeah. Very much so. And it's very funny. He uses flamethrower, does all this stuff, and then turns off the force field and they get out.
Hits the red button, puts the thing on the other thing. Yeah. So I noticed a couple things about Chakotay, and then I noticed it back on Voyager with Commander Tysus, who's the first officer. The pip spacing is driving me insane. Now, Janeway
is especially a
Janeway is a vice admiral, so she has the single bar with the three circles on it. Looks just like it would on a non-animated uniform. The pips on this are like miles apart on Chakotay. Of course, he's a captain, has the 4 pips. Tysus is a commander, has the 3 pips, and for absolutely no reason, they're miles apart on the collar. So I don't know.
It's on everybody, but you don't we don't really see 2.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen like any lieutenants or.
I feel like we've seen at least 1.
We've seen ensigns.
Yeah, and we've seen ensigns, which is it's a 9-issue 1 pip exactly. So
yeah, so that but they're not spacing the pips out terribly well.
Super cool fight scene back on Solum in the future between I call Gwyn
Well,
G.
this is in the past.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It's in the present.
Past for them, but present. Yeah.
Past, present. Yeah, Sensia and G are mixing it up, and they're on the sinking platform, and there's Egyptian hieroglyphs on the air, and they're whooping ass, and there's Force stuff happening, and it's just a lot of great stuff. Jankum's bird puns crack me up because he's like, he says to a drink, I guess you don't really like my bird puns.
You don't really like them very much. Well,
yeah.
I guess I won't ruffle your feathers.
You know what? It just, so to wrap it up, and again, I know we're a little more rapid fire because these are shorter episodes, but this was a great episode because Gwendala loses her fight. Our guys lose, in the future, screw up because the Protostar does depart as it's supposed to, but Chakotay and the Birdman are on it. So, and then they go into the rift and then everything is just screwed. It's Dahl's
fault again, technically.
He is
the disruptor. And
he's the Marty McFly of Star Trek. He's because he turns it into.
You should mention that.
He turns into
up in the next episode.
Back to the Future kind of sentiment. So to wrap this up, ratings wise, I mean, I'll get it out of the way. These were all 9s or 10s for me. These episodes,
they were fantastic.
They were all so great. Like I said, the only things that I find that kind of rub me the wrong way are weird costuming things that are like, well, you know what? There's weird costuming things on Lower Decks as well, and who cares? The difference in
costuming stuff in some of the live action.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. What's a little different about Lower Decks is that we did have 2 of those characters actually transition over to live action. And hopefully that happens with these characters someday too, especially since they're now in this kind of middle bit between the end of TNG and Picard as well. So, oh my goodness. All right. So, okay, moving on. Episode 4 is Temporal Mechanics 101. Again, time to get the book out. Although separated by decades, the Infinity and Voyager crews band together to save Gwen's life. A mysterious messenger reaches out to Gwen. Oh, so we kick off on Voyager. I just love that we're on Voyager. Again, still don't understand why it's as big as it is or whatever, but you know what, who cares? It's bigger on the inside. It's like the TARDIS. Murph is chatting with, again, some weird shape with a mumbly voice. So it is not the dude from Enterprise, James Horan, who is future guy. It's something else, but we'll find out very soon. But we don't find out.
Wonder if there was if it was a future guy tie-in. It ends up not. It's more of a reference. But
right, exactly. And we don't find out until we get to our next block of episodes who it is. Yeah. So, but yes, we get it. We get a great convenient Star Trek explanation on how time changing hasn't wiped everyone out because it's ripples in time, or they're insulated, or the Protostar has anti-temporal technology. It's just
the Infinity has temporal shielding, which protected it, and then because the temporal shielding is tied to the Voyager, that timeline is also protected in a way.
Correctamundo. My favorite notable thing about this episode is that when we get a setting after the cold open, or I should say, I think after the credits anyway, we get Solum 52 years in the future. We get a 6-digit star date. 6-digit decimal. We get star date. I rewound it so I could write it down. 112152.1. That is the first 6-digit star date we've ever had, because in the original series we had 4 digits with a decimal. In the TNG era, which started with the first season of TNG, we had 5 digits, the first being 4 and a 1, the second digit indicating the season of TNG, because it went from 1 to 7 when the series ended. And then the other 3 digits indicating the passage through a year in 000 to 999. Now, what the hell does the 6-digit one mean? I don't know, but I think it's super cool. It's a good jump forward. I'm trying to remember the next reference 32nd Century Discovery what those star dates sounded like. I have no idea, or if they had abandoned star dates by that point.
They may have mentioned the star.
I mean, in 3 seasons, I feel like they must have tossed a star date, or they might, because there were captain's logs. Burnham said captain's log. What followed when she said captain's log, stardate, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm curious now. So this is one that I would love her write in. Hit us up, secretfriendsunite@gmail.com, or hit us up on Threads or Instagram if you like, and give us a ping if you've got inside knowledge we don't. I would love to hear about it. So yeah, so the kids reconnect with Janeway, long distance call through the wormhole. I still continue to love how Dahl just calls the Admiral Janeway. He doesn't call her Admiral Janeway, just Janeway, blah, and she never, like, once you show some respect, you're a prospective cadet, but she just kind of lets it slide.
It's one of the things that's a little un-Janeway from
right.
But it's carrying over from season 1 where he was talking to the hologram that way.
Yeah, so that's
and I think that
brain.
At least because it's a kids show, they didn't want to mess with that too much.
Exactly. I do love how Gwendala G, her ship is the Sacagawea, which was one of Voyager's shuttles, which was clearly named by Chakotay back in that time. So totally awesome homage. But yeah, poor G, they managed to connect with Gwendala through phasing and time, and they get this little blip on her, so that she, unless I'm jumping ahead into the next episode.
Just a look.
Okay.
I think at the end of this episode.
Gotcha. Yes. We
get the coordinates that everyone goes. Then they start walking, but they leave Jankum to fix the ship, which he eventually kind of does.
Right. Percussive maintenance. That's the big. They
figure out what they need, and then they contact Voyager and get Temporal Mechanics 101, where we get not a cameo, it's like a full-on appearance by the scientific consultant for modern Star Trek, Dr. Aaron McDonald.
I have met Dr. Aaron on more than one occasion. I have a picture with her on the wall in our dining room because she co-hosted one of the trivias that we won with Eugene Cordero, and we got a snap at the end, and it was a fun pick. And she's super cool. I had a conversation with her because she was decked out in her science blues from this show, and told me it's
been in the show.
Yeah, it was just from Sinac Studios, which is in Denver. I checked them out. Didn't end up going in that direction, but now we think the customer that we use through SFI and just through our chapter in general might actually be making one, because I've been kind of squeezing them, and they said they were making samples. So we will see. I'll definitely, if you follow us on social media, if you follow us over on the SFI Corps of Engineer costuming group that I run, the updates, you'll definitely find those there, because that's a super cool uniform, and it's one of the few. I've gone all the way through uniforms that I really want to have, and I've actually started selling off some of the older ones. That's a new one that I would definitely purchase. So yeah, love seeing Dr. Aaron is super cool. She lives in Colorado and is overall just a super cool person. So shout out to Dr. Aaron. Dahl has to watch this tutorial. He gets
so many references to different things.
I know.
You see the voyage home. You see the bounty going around the sun. You see Q. There's just all sorts of references to ways that people go through time travel. The only thing that they don't mention is transporter shenanigans.
Right. But transporter shenanigans, which I did love chapter 5. So we want to build a time machine. Are you sure you want to? So they managed to use that to get back to Solomon in the past/present and save her. Or no, because I wrote happiness for a moment. I did write. I think Michelle's hair is even weird, even for. I said it's weird even for a Vulcan. This should be part of a scientific study.
It is a little strange for a Vulcan.
Exactly. So, and then Murph is back talking to the Shadow, and you're right. We're going to have to tilt over into the next episode, but this again, 9 out of 10. Great timey-wimey flip-flop
references that I want to bring up.
Please.
It is interesting that they talk about time as a progression of events rather than the previous reference that they made, which was timey-wimey stuff, which was a Doctor Who reference.
Timey-wimey stuff, which I like too.
So it was interesting that this went linear rather than overly complicated. But that's because it's 101.
Right, exactly. Got to start slow.
The other couple interesting things was when they reconfigured the Infinity to work, Jankum is going through like this is working, this isn't working, and then he describes the thing is fluxing, and I was like, flux capacitor is fluxing.
Yes.
We had a Back to Future reference there, and then
Engine running.
and then if you look at the outside of the ship, especially when you have the robots come and attack it, it's very, very much like the Matrix, if you've ever seen that ship fighting the bots. So there's two references in there, which I think was kind of
nice. Gotcha. I love it. So yeah, super score, great stuff. They're just not they're just not missing anything for me. They're really crushing it. So all right, let's take it home with episode 5. I assume this was a 9 of 10 for you.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Big time. All right, episode 5, hit me.
All right. Observer's Paradox, reunited on Voyager and under strict supervision by the Doctor. The gang must decode a secret message their mysterious benefactor left with Murph.
What could it be? All right, break it down.
All right. Well, and this is the one where we begin and we see, we got Gwen get her.
I did write. I said G has to wear a thingy so she won't disappear. Boom.
Yeah, she's got something that the doctor's put on her that she's not going to disappear.
The doctor hooked it up. Yeah.
They start with a debrief, which is very funny because you have like Doll gets coffee with sugar for the first time and now loves it instead of everyone else is giving their various parts of events. Murph's briefing is completely useless, but Janeway tells him that it was helpful, which is really funny.
Right.
At the end of it, there's a really hilarious reference where the doctor just says, like, I have a headache. I don't even have a head. And I haven't seen a crew this dysfunctional since the Cerritos. Which is a really, really fun reference. Like, that's one of the things about Prodigy that's fantastic is they just they don't like hold it for a joke. It's just like reference done. It's like it's just part of the world and we're done.
And to give you a little context of the Cerritos, the first season of Lower Decks is 2380, about a year after Nemesis. This season takes us all the way through 2385. 85.
This starts in 84.
Oh, it starts in 84. So this is 84, 85.
Yeah, I'm looking at the in-universe star date.
Oh, very good. Yeah, is it
6.1?
Are we 61? 6100 is the year. But we know for a fact that we end in 2385 because of some things that happened in the last 2 episodes, which we won't spoil. It definitely squarely puts it in a different set of uniforms. Oh my God. I had a fun shout out. We do see Dal in his quarters, probably in the first half of the episode. And he has a touchpad next to his bed that's color coded red, yellow, blue, which I'm like, aw, that's cool. That's how they're setting up. At one point, Zero is distracting the doctor, getting him to talk about one of his books. And he's talking about, well, such and such, this and that. And it was a love triangle. And he's talking about characters in his book. And then blah, 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 so-and-so.
Love Hexagon.
I mean, if we didn't already have such a great title for this episode, Love Hexagon would be the way that we go. So I don't know, Peter, what's your vibe?
Hexagonal shenanigans. I don't know.
That
doesn't sound as fun.
I know. Yeah. Chakotay and the Birdman is still always going to be one of my favorites. So, you get, why am I forgetting the characters' names? The engineer guy is messing with it. Oh my God, is messing with the universal translator to break down Murph speak or Murphy's to get Murph to talk. Yeah. D. Bradley Baker, he is the glue that holds together so many wonderful things. And is this where we get the whales and cetacean ops for the first time?
This is where.
Yes, that is right.
And fun fact. The whale's name is Jillian.
It's in my notes. I was rewatching this yesterday. I also conducted an interview with a very nice guy named Mike Irvand, who is an SFI guy in Minnesota, who I was interviewing him for a pre-recorded segment that'll air during the International Conference of SFI, which is next month. And we touched on Star Trek IV being the first film that I remember really seeing in the theater. And I went and rewatched it last night. I really enjoyed seeing that movie, which I've seen a million times, but still. And it just kind of re-sparked my interest. But Tysus, again, coming in with his screwy pips, does drop the strange things are afoot, which to me was a reference to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Very nice. And now we're getting Admiral Jellicoe. He's a 4-star. He's a big shot. So he's coming in. I said, how will he screw things up? Let us count the ways. He orders the wormhole collapse to save the universe or some crap. So the good news is Murph can talk to the whale. And I thought, Spock would be very proud, again, referring back to Star Trek 4, attempting the hell to communicate. And I dig that when Murph gets in the tank with the whale, he turns into a sea creature, which is so cool. He looks like a sea anemone. He's got the big flappy tail. What's the sea creature I'm thinking of? I mean, that he kind of looks like?
He kind of looks like a manta of sorts.
There you go. Very good. So they're talking, and we're going back and forth between, Janeway being very heartbroken. She's walking through her ready room, looking in her various mementos, which are clearly a lot of them are from Voyager era, including, a framed comm badge, which I feel like Chakotay gives her later on, but maybe she already had it. Or maybe he did one of these things in that episode. He walked in and grabbed it off the shelf.
Later on, there's. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What you know? What?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll probably hear us reference this again. But she's got his. I just like to call it his Akuchi stone, which that's basically what it is.
Which he later gives her. He gives her in a flashback, and I will note that they reference back to the launching of the Protostar and the two of them having a conversation, and he turns around and then turns back and has the stone in his hand and says, I want you to have this. I'm like, he didn't have that in his pocket, because as Peter and I both know, a lot of Star Trek cosplay pants don't have pockets. So where did he get it from? And plus that's a weird
hammer space.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's the one lacking. But to be honest with you,
every animated show does it. It drives me nuts, but every show does it.
They just have it.
It's Star Wars, the Clone Wars. It's like, I have this big bulky item. Let me reach behind my back. Now it's gone.
Yeah. It's a magic
or I need
trick.
it. Let me reach behind my back, and now I have the thing.
It's the Force. It's like in the Rise of Skywalker where they do the teleporting of the lightsaber.
It's so much worse.
I know, it's very true. But again, this is animated, so they get away with that.
They can get away with it, but it still annoys me.
Yeah, I know. I totally understand. So, so the whale is able to translate something that Murph can write. He writes a series of numbers, and then G punches those into her timey-wimey armband, and she goes on a vision quest. She's talking to the shadow. It's the shadowy thing Murph's been talking to, and it's still like, find me before they do. Oh, I missed that earlier in the episode. One of my favorites, when Murph builds the spirally piece of art that kind of points them the way. Yes, I do love that. Even though I wrote, and not thinking about the fact that it was food, I wrote that it was a rubber dog toy cheeseburger. That's what the cheeseburger made me think of, because I always had one of those for my golden retriever when I was growing up.
There is a cheeseburger in there.
Yes, definitely. I did. That's definitely where I was coming from. But anyway, after doing this, the shadow says, find me before they do. She comes back, and now she knows that the spiral is a map, and it's going to point the way. And that's the end of the episode. Bloom, 10 out of 10, even with the Akuchi stone. What did you call that? What
hammer space?
The hammer space.
Exactly. Akuchi stone.
Oh my God. Is that going to be the name of this episode? I don't know. We can't, it's already one of the longer episode names we've had. So I don't know. We might have to revisit this before I publish. So we'll talk about it later. But anyway, 10 out of 10 for me. I just can't get over how damn good this show is. They're really nailing it. I'm enjoying it. The second half of season 1 I thought was better than the first half, but now we're in the first half of season 2, and I just think they're crushing it. I'm loving it.
Oh yeah, this one's great.
So this is great. So again, just as a reminder, this is available on Netflix, which you probably have. If you don't have it, unfortunately, it's not as easy to password share as it used to be, because Netflix is the first streamer that really crunches down on that. So you will have to do if you do a month of it, it's like $6.99 or something with commercials. Totally worth the price of admission. But again, if you're a serious ass trekker like Peter and myself, when this becomes available for digital or physical purchase, I'd recommend getting it that way as well. Snatch it and have it, definitely. All right, well let's wrap that up. I had a feeling we'd end up running a bit long, but that works for me. me. But we're going to talk about Deep Space Nine. We're getting into the second part, 7 great episodes of season 5, and we're going to go through a costume change, which is, it's a big deal in the theater, like, oh, Act 2 costume change. But we're getting into what you see Peter wearing, if you're watching us on YouTube, what many people consider to be one of the absolute pinnacle of the TNG era costumes. That would be the First Contact, gray shoulders uniform,
The
which
blacks and grays,
the blacks and grays. But we, and again, I would say it's minor footnote, but again, Peter and I are costumers, so it's not a minor footnote to us. Peter wears costumes when we do this. Even with the AC pouring into my basement studio, which I had to, Peter and I were going to sit down and record. I'm like, I got to run upstairs and close all the windows, turn the air on because it's really hot down here.
Show everyone what we had as an issue.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, thank you. Wait, and no stripes on the sleeves either.
Yep.
That was the other one. But yes, we'll get there. But anyway, let's start talking about a somewhat satirical episode that ended up having a pretty serious piece of character development for Worf, which I remember watching this first time around and be kind of blown away by that. But I'll start. Episode 7 of the season is Let He Who Is Without Sin Cast the First Akuchimoya Stone. Okay, that second part I made up. Oh, episode is directed by Rene Auberjonois. Odo himself might have been one of the first or maybe very few episodes that he ever directed, but don't quote me on that. But I get the feeling that he didn't turn into LeVar Burton, who actually directed the next one. Writer credits are for Robert Hewitt Wolf and Ira Stephen Bear. So the guys who shaped this show wrote this one. From November 11 of 1996, Worf and Dax vacation on the pleasure planet Risa and encounter unexpected dangers from... I'm not even going to touch the political reference it would make on this of what I think about this group they bump into. But this is an episode that probably the first half of it is kind of played for laughs. We also get a guest starring role from Vanessa L. Williams, who was a pop star in the 1990s. Peter, you probably...
Is that who that was? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say you'd probably a reference that you didn't grab, but she had a lot of chart-topping hits in the early 90s.
It's one of those things that, like, a lot of times if it's someone who was popular famous, I don't pick up on them.
I hear you.
In the older shows, I will pick up on if someone's an actor, but if they were like relevant in some other way,
right, music or
not
something else, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, totally makes sense. So, but yeah, the first half of this episode, so yeah, they're taking a trip to Risa. Quark manages to invite himself on their runabout. Lita and Bashir manage to invite themselves on the runabout. So all of a sudden their vacation turns into 5 people and they're like, it's fine. You won't even really see us. It's not going to be a big deal. And it ends up being a big deal.
Kind of do.
Yeah. Ends up being a problem. So, but you get a lot of, the fact that Worf and Dax seem to have a pretty crappy relationship. He's very overbearing. She puts up with it. I'm sure if we had one of our female contributors on here, they would probably have a lot of really terrible stuff to say about the toxic relationship. But I can relate, having been in a toxic marriage or two in my time, what it's like to have somebody who really wants to control everything that you do. And it doesn't really resolve that issue so much, but I feel like it gets better from here.
They at least address it.
Right. We find out, why has Worf always been so stolid? Why has he always been the anti-Klingon in a lot of the ways he behaves? And he reveals it in, I think, a very touching segment that happens in the back half of the episode, probably in the last 15 minutes. He talks about the fact that when he was growing up on the farm world of Galt, with his foster brother and his foster parents, he said it seemed that everybody knew everybody, but everybody knew me. I was the Klingon child. I was wild. I was crazy. I was captain of our soccer team, and we had this match where I jumped up to hit the ball, and another kid jumped at the same time. And we collided in the air, and I didn't feel it, but I had broken his neck with my big Klingon forehead. Yeah, so Worf said, well, I realized that if I'm to live amongst humans, that I've got to tone it down. I've got to be very milquetoast. And that's why I am the way I am. And you're like, she was like, thank you for sharing that with me. And you know what? Thank you. And you can tell it's Wolf and Bear who are such incredible writers that gave us this insight, because the rest of the episode is kind of nonsense. The conservative party, the Federation sucks, blah blah blah. No, I couldn't really care very much about that. The stuff between Lita and Bashir, they go there to break up, and it's a Bajoran tradition where you get everything out of your system by sleeping with much. It's just like, it's nonsense. And then Quark just being Quark, it's just very weird. So,
and Quark doesn't even have like some really good funny moments in this episode either. Like, he's just there.
He's very tacked on. Yeah, he's very tacked on.
I mean, I like when Quark is there to react to things a lot of times, because his reactions are usually like completely wrong for whatever he's experiencing.
Right.
But in this case, it's like, aside from like one or two things, it's like, Quark, what are you doing?
They don't give him anything worthwhile to do.
No.
Which I totally dig on that. So but otherwise, like I said, for the 2 minutes that we get with Worf's reveal, that we all wondered that about the character since 1987, almost 10 years, wondering why is he so anti-Klingon?
Yeah, voices it like all these other Klingons are like happy and
boisterous and
all of this and
drinking and punching. Yeah, exactly.
And it's very interesting to see why.
Yeah, exactly correct. So I definitely dug on that. So, well, cool. All right, next one's yours.
All right, things past. So we go from absolutely silly but with a lot of character development to a lot more intense with more character development.
Right. Yes, faster and more intense, like George Lucas said.
Yes. Directed by LeVar Burton, written by Michael Taylor, aired November 18th of 96. Cisco, Odo, and Dax. Cisco
and Garrick.
And Garrick, of course. Why can I forget my man Garrick?
Of course.
Are found unconscious. While Bashir attempts to revive them, the four wake up during the Cardassian occupation of Bajor several years earlier inside the Bajoran section ghetto.
Right, the ghetto. Exactly. And they are, of course, not themselves. It's a very much a Quantum Leap kind of situation where they're in the bodies of other people. But yeah, we get, so this is Tarek Nor, I think maybe was it a year or two before the beginning of the series?
5 years before the beginning of the series, I think.
Okay, I couldn't remember exactly how long Odo had been there, but yeah, the big juxtaposition is that they're seeing a different chief of security of the station, played by the fantastic Kurtwood Smith, who I absolutely adore. He's great in everything. Of course, probably most famous in genre circles as the main bad guy from RoboCop, but of course as Red Foreman from that 70s show. He also played the Federation president in Star Trek VI, and so he's just...
And he's the lead guy for the Krenim Temporal weapon, too.
Right, yeah, Anorax, I believe is the name of that character. So, but yeah, so great long genre pedigree, Star Trek pedigree, pedigree, blah, blah, I can speak with words. But we do find out that by the end of the episode, Odo is misremembering, because the events of this episode where the four people who our characters are injected into are innocent of a crime, but they're executed for it.
Gul Dukat.
Right, exactly. And it was, instead of it being Kurtwood Smith's character, who was Thrax, I think, in reality it was Odo who killed them, or ordered their execution, which you finally see in the final shot of this episode. And yeah, when our people wake up, obviously it was Odo's deep dark secret, which was uncovered in kind of unshoveled in his brain.
This bit of that's going on outside as they've been talking about collaborators and vision
because
history in a way.
Yeah, they're coming from a conference exactly this, and do remember, of course, this is during the period of time when Odo is a solid. Spoilers, sorry. I think we all know that's something that comes to pass. Maybe pretty soon.
If you've seen any later Star Trek, yeah,
exactly. So this was wow, what a great episode. And again, I remember watching it for the first time, not necessarily figuring out what the hell was going on, because they don't make it super obvious that it is a very typical. It's a dream sequence and da 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 da. Because there's
kind of make it obvious at a certain point when they start doing the reveal of the present day with Bashir trying to do something. It becomes a little bit clearer, but it's still not 100% certain that it's not like some sort of temporal
Yeah, exactly. That they're actually, that it's very quantum leap, like they're actually there.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's they use let's throw in an extra type of orb Bajoran thing, and that's because I think it was an orb shadow, where the prophets, wormhole aliens, whatever, connected their four brains in a link, much like, so it was kind of a leftover bit of Odo's former DNA. So yeah, a great Star Trekky way to tell a great human story of revisionist history and trying to bury the past instead of dealing with it. And
there's a really interesting line with Odo and Kira at the end, where she's like, "These are the only ones that you know that you've killed that were innocent." And you just see like this totally haunted look on Odo's face. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is horrifying for him, but at the same time, it's very understandable with what they're trying to tell. Of like, when you're in the middle of some of this horrible stuff and you're not like thinking through some of it, sometimes you do shit that's not good.
Right.
You might not be like fully aware because you don't have the right information, or you're just trying to survive, which was kind of the case, both of the cases with Odo.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you see like Kira fighting with herself, and I just have to say there's good performances here because you can see this on Kira's face, you can see it on Odo's face.
Yeah.
Like she's trying to come to terms with this and still care for Odo because she does.
Right.
It's like, and see like the man who made mistakes and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
In spite of, well, he's now a collaborator. Well, not really, but
right.
So it's just interesting how part of it is also getting past the part where people may have collaborated with something that was evil,
right,
but not 100% intentionally. So that's an interesting thing, because you have Garrick complaining about that earlier, but in his Garrick way,
right?
And then you see like the actual like the better way of looking at it, rather than Garrick's rather blasé. I just hope they wanted to see another side of the argument. Garrick,
I'm so blasé. Oh my goodness. But yeah, great stuff, great episode. And again, I remember watching it for the first time, not necessarily figuring out the twist or kind of where they were going. So they pulled it out in a great Star Trek way, but also an even better a DS9 kind of way. So I was really impressed by this one. So cool. All right, episode 9 is The Ascent. Alan Craker is back. Canadian director Alan Craker, I think we talked a little bit about in a previous episode. He was very, very big, not only here on DS9, but also on Voyager. I think he directed the finale of we talked about it last time, the time before that. He directed the finales both of those two shows and maybe Enterprise as well. So he's a big deal. It's a big deal. Ira and Robert, again, writing this episode. So love it when they team up from Thanksgiving episode in 1996. Kind of a weird one. Forced to crash land on a desolate planet, Odo and Quark must climb a mountain, literally, to transmit a distress signal, but they're also climbing the mountain of their relationship.
Not so subtle metaphor.
Not so subtle. Jake and Nog temporarily back on Deep Space Nine for his year abroad from the Academy, find sharing quarters isn't as enjoyable as they thought it would be. So you get both an A story and a B story that are not really that same, they're not really that offbeat or original. I hate to say it, because Odo is taking Quark to a tribunal somewhere on unfortunately trumped up charges, and
it's not even trumped up charges because he's a witness. He's not actually.
Oh yeah.
Which is something that he doesn't tell Odo.
Yeah, exactly.
Much later.
But unfortunately, the Orion Syndicate decided to plant a bomb on their runabout that blows up, and they end up struggling. They're on planet. It's cold all the time, and even colder. But they're like on a mountainside that has vegetation, so it's an alien planet. But usually when you're on a planet where the cold will kill you, there's not like trees and stuff in the background that looks like it's like, well, it's acting like it's January, where it's really like maybe mid-October.
Alpine.
Yeah.
Geography,
I guess. And then the Jake and the Nog, hey, we can't figure out how to be roommates, because it's just I found it kind of obnoxious. I don't know about you.
It is a little. There's some funny bits in it. Maybe it's because I'm closer to that. When I first watched it, I was like fresh out of college.
Yeah.
Or I was still in college when I watched it, actually.
Yeah.
And so there was some stuff that I could relate to.
Right.
Because like, my roommate has a very specific way of doing things, and
He's going to make you want to do it with
You to
him.
do it with him. It's like my roommates didn't really do that, but it was like I
Yeah.
could see that happening and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was just
True.
And then you have Jake, who's just like, they kind of overdid it to a point where it's like there's pants in the replicator. It's like,
yeah, I don't
explode.
I don't get the scene where Nog walks in after a long day and their quarters are trash, and he said, "Hey, when I left this morning, things were spick and span," and I'm like, all Jake is doing is sitting in a chair. He's doing what we all do, playing the game on his phone, essentially. And the place is trash. He's like, well, I was working. Yeah, you're like pants in the replicator. It doesn't make any sense. Did he come into a room and just be like, blah, like start throwing things everywhere? It was a little over the top and kind of dumb.
Rooms wrecked, and I have seen rooms that have been wrecked by hoarders, and this doesn't make sense.
But it doesn't happen in 8 hours, it's just
that quickly.
Yeah, you don't go from it's 8 o'clock in the morning and now it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon and the place is trash.
Piles or like on like horizontal surfaces. They're not like jammed into.
Yeah, so it was just they were trying a little too hard to do that. So yeah, this episode's kind of a miss for me. So anyway, all right,
good Odo and Quark stuff.
Yeah, but still, yeah. Is it worth an entire episode where they could have snuck in a scene here or there, like as they do more effectively in other episodes?
No, it's kind of a filler episode. It's not as filler episodes go. It's not bad.
Right,
it kind of is a filler episode.
Right. All right, moving on to the excited for the costumes but annoyed by the costumes debut of the Grays and Blacks. Peter, it's all yours.
All right, episode 10, Rapture. Directed by Jonathan West, story by L.J. Strom, teleplay by Hans Beimler. Aired December 30th of 96. An accident causes Sisko to have prophetic visions. He finds an ancient Bajoran city lost for 20,000 years. Kai Wynn reconsiders her attitude towards him.
She's such a suck up. Oh,
Kai Wynn sucks.
Kai Wynn sucks. We just called the episode that. Kai Wynn sucks. Also, water is wet. Yeah.
She's the character that you love to hate. Like she's played so well.
Yeah. The late Louise Fletcher, yes, what a absolutely spectacular performance. So, but yes, as mentioned, obviously we get the Greys in this. We do see a flag officer, Sisko's buddy, Charlie. Is it Charlie Waters, Admiral Waters, still wearing your TNG Admiral's uniform, and that persists through the beginning of next season. We meet Admiral Ross. He's wearing this uniform, and then in the next episode, they roll that in.
The interesting thing is, I think for 2 episodes he's wearing the TNG uniform, but they added the ribbing on the shoulders.
I'm gonna have to go back and check that out because I thought it was pretty straight.
No, they added the ribbing on the shoulders of the TNG uniform.
This I have to see.
Not for this one, but for Ross did.
You're gonna have to,
and then eventually they switch it,
and then it turned into the thing with the. And that's one of the cosplays I have that I don't like the jacket because I had to buy it from an off-brand one because our preferred vendor stopped stocking it. But I bought the belt buckle, and that belt buckle, which was hand-painted and came from England, was very expensive. So I still have to find ways to do that cosplay to make it worth it.
I mean, these uniforms always look amazing, and those Admiral uniforms look fantastic. Right. They just hadn't designed those.
Right, exactly. I am curious, and you'll have to send me, after we get done recording here, that picture you're talking about because I'm curious. Yeah. But outside of all the uniform talk, this was a pretty important episode, was it not?
Yeah, I remember the first time that I watched this episode, it drove me up a freaking wall. And it wasn't necessarily because of the content of the episode. Like the whole gist of the episode is basically Sisko has visions and Bajor can't enter the Federation yet for some reason that the prophets have.
Right.
That's basically your whole storyline.
Right.
But there's just this is where, like, for me, Sisko, this is one of those moments where Sisko for me drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Because when Sisko goes full on, like, insistent panic mode, he becomes very hard for me to watch.
And he's very all like, oh, the locusts are coming for Bajor. And he's really, Avery Brooks, super talented guy, but he's really digging into the melodrama on this one, I think.
Yeah, when he gets melodramatic and like, he's supposed to be like, you're losing your shit.
Yeah.
He becomes painful, you're losing your shit. Like every other time when he's being serious or or emoting or everything else, he's great. It's just whenever they give him the acting note of you need to lose your shit,
Yeah.
I can't handle it. I don't
Lose
know
your
what
shit
it is.
for me.
I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, but like this episode and then like later episodes where he does that, and I think he's done it a little bit before.
Yeah.
But where he starts to talk like this or something like that.
It kind of pulls you out. Yeah.
I just don't like it.
I can't disagree. This is significant because they put it out there and they yank it right away that now it's time for Bajor to join the Federation. But Sisko throws that off because he said, well, these visions I'm having, which are going to kill him. And at the end, Jake says, okay, well, doctor, do the procedure that will clear him of these visions. And Kai Wynn's like, well, that wasn't really his decision because the prophets really wanted him to this and that. And then she's having this conversation with Kira. Kira's like, well, it was a 17-year-old boy who didn't want his father to die. So fuck you, lady. I know. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe the prophets showed as much as he was supposed to see, and maybe it's not up to you, so maybe you should fucking zip it. Because that's basically, but Kai Wynn's like, no, I know better.
The strange thing with Kai Wynn is like she's willing to listen to Sisko while he's having the visions, but then once Sisko loses agency, she suddenly has to be fully in control again.
She's such a manipulative word I won't use. Oh, reminds me of my ex-wife.
She's a horrible person.
Yeah, exactly.
Kai Wynn
reminds me of my ex-wife. Absolutely terrible. Oh my gosh. But yeah, a great episode. And thankfully in the next episode, somebody buys Sisko the correct jacket. And then
there's no Kai Wynn.
And there's no Kai Wynn, and they fix his badge. And we're much happier once we get into episode 11, which is The Darkness and the Light. Mike Vihar doing the directing, story by Brian Fuller, regular of the series, and teleplay by my hero. Looking forward to meeting him in October in Chicago at the Battlestar thing, Mr. Ronald D. Moore. First episode of 1997, airing on January 6th. Someone is killing former members of Kira's resistance cell, and she might be next. So yes, we get a sequence of people getting squeezed out. Some characters that we've not met or heard from until we get to Pharrell and Lupiza, who we met in the season 3 episode Shakar. It was very sad. Pharrell, I think Lupiza was the woman, right? Who I remember when I was watching that first episode, a guy I knew who lived in my dorms was watching it with me and said, oh, look, Bonnie Raitt is in Star Trek now. Bonnie Raitt is a singer you may or may not have ever heard of, but dead ringer for this actress. And then Pharrell was, I can't remember the dude's name, but he plays in Orion, a couple, I think, in Enterprise, and we end up seeing him in some other Star Trek stuff and just other deals. But yeah, it's very sad to see all these guys get killed off. The mastermind of this is a reclusive Cardassian who was injured in a terrorist attack that was orchestrated by all the people that he had killed off. Kira being one of the last of them. Shakar was also, I assume Shakar was also on the list, but he
may have already been in prison at that point. So
who? Shakar?
Yeah.
When Shakar?
When this was going on, because Shakar like died or went to prison like before the occupation was over.
No, Shakar is the first minister at this point. Kira's
he is at this point. I'm saying in the past of why he might not be going after him.
Oh, I don't remember that about his backstory. Yeah, I don't know.
Just remember they thought Shakar was dead.
So I really don't remember that.
Yeah, so in one of the previous seasons, they went to go. Someone came and showed his earring, and then they're like, "Oh, well, he's alive on this prison."
No. Yeah. You're thinking a different character. Different character.
Oh,
yeah, okay. Yeah. You're thinking of the 3-parter that started season 2, and the guy's name was Lee Nollis. You're thinking of Lee Nollis.
I'm thinking of Lee Nollis. Okay.
Not Shakar. Yeah, Shakar was still alive. So now I can't, even though I just watched this episode, I'm not remembering why Shakar didn't end up showing up at this episode. But anyway, we then get obviously a bit at the end where Kira is captured, but she manages to get her way out of it and defeat the villain. And the darkness and the light was really played up by this guy was dark, pulling things into light that we didn't want to talk about. Kira had to come out and say, hey, you know what? I don't care if you were a combatant or a non-combatant. You were invaders in our home, and that made everybody a target, which is dark. But you also kind of see where she's coming from, having the full picture of what the Cardassian occupation was like, where they were just, they raped, they killed, they pillaged, they plundered the planet. There was nothing about the Cardassian occupation that you can say, well, I kind of see where the Cardassians were coming from. No, you can't. So, I know if I was a Bajoran who lived, I would be killing every Cardassian. I would absolutely be part of the resistance if I was a Bajoran who lived back in those days. There's no doubt about it. Fighting for freedom, like G.I. Joe. But anyway, great episode. And great, character, great characterization by Nana Visitor, who again I've met a few times, and she's delightful. Yeah, really dug it. How about you?
I also really quite like this episode. It's very interesting how you at the end you do have the Cardassian is going to forcibly remove O'Brien's child to separate the darkness from the light, because that's
there you
his
go.
Shtick.
That was
Like,
that was what
you are dark and this is an innocent, and so he's making this big deal about how he and the Cardassians were really intent on not harming the innocent, which is complete crap.
Well, they just killed whomever the hell they wanted to.
Right, but his whole thing is like, you hurt me and other innocents of whatever family it was.
Right.
And because you were just bombing indiscriminately. And there is something that you can understand if you look at his perspective.
Yeah.
Of like, if there's a freedom fighter situation and like they're trying to take out something because, they're fighting for their freedom and people get killed who are innocent, it is horrible and that should be recognized. But it's not like they were intending to kill innocent people.
Right.
So, whereas the Cardassians occupying were definitely doing that to inflict terror upon the population to make sure they stay oppressed. So it's an interesting, like, you see the mental gymnastics and sort of the psychosis that he's got going on.
Yeah.
And it's just very interesting about that character. So, yeah.
Most def.
Well written.
Well, yeah, very much so. All right, moving on. This one's yours. Number 12.
All right, number 12, The Begotten. Directed by Jesus Salvador Trevino. Written by Renee Echeverria. Aired January 27th of 97. When Quark discovers, well, he doesn't discover. Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, Quark.
Yeah, Quark
obtains it.
Sells it to him. Yeah, I was funny. I was watching that opening sequence. I'm like, wow. I thought Quark made a nice deal here because it feels like this jar fell into his this fell. I can't remember how he got it, but then he sells it to Odo, and it's funny. Odo studying it, and Quark does a pad, and then
takes
he goes
his thumbprint.
There you go. Because Odo has a thumbprint because he's immortal at this point.
Yeah,
so,
which is just it's like Quark acquires this thing that he thinks is. It's like, this must be changeling related. He is correct.
Right. And it's like selling Star Wars merchandise to a Star Wars fan. They'll buy anything.
Yeah. And so he does that, and then it's like, oh, this is a baby. And Quark is like, well, it's worth even more. And then
and he keeps checking up the price, and then he's like,
ridiculous.
That was one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Oh, it's so funny. But then eventually Odo starts to do what he tries to like help the changeling. It's originally sick, and so you have to like clear up its matrix, which Dr. Bashir helps him do.
Right.
And then they go and he's trying to help teach it and help it figure out how to shapeshift and grow a little bit.
Right.
And through the course of the episode, we get Dr.
Mora. Dr. Mora's actor James Sloyan, who I
so many things.
One of my very favorite episodes of TNG, which is The Defector. He was the Romulan defector. Yep. Love that episode. But yeah, we saw him back, and I feel like he was in Enterprise and Voyager at some point. If I was to really dig in,
sorts of things. He's everywhere. But anyway, we have Dr. Mora show up because he hears that Quark has found another changeling, and so then Odo is resistant to Dr. Mora's help because he holds him.
It's your typical father-son stuff. I mean,
you didn't treat me well when I was growing up, and it's like, well, we didn't know what was going on yet.
Right. Every father who has a son or son who has a father, like I always talk about when you and I are talking about Battlestar, the father-son stuff always really gets to me, because I had a challenging relationship with my dad when I was growing up, as many of us did. I have an exceedingly challenging relationship with my two sons. I have a pretty good relationship with my stepson. But anyway, father-son stuff is just, those are always stories that I really react well to. And that is, because we pretty much, that's the A story of this. The B story is Kara going into labor and this really elaborate, weird really hippie ceremony thing going on.
I mean, it's funny, but it's also just,
I don't know. It's just, I find it, and then they kind of tie it all together at the end because the big bit is that the baby changeling doesn't live, but it does it does integrate itself into Odo's body, which makes him become a changeling again, which you just knew it was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So that's cool, but there are implications about that we find out later on, which are important. But then,
and there's a good reconciliation between Mora and Odo.
That's wonderful. That's definitely not only one of the best things I think out of this group of episodes, but it's something that's significant to me personally. So I tend to kind of love on it more for that reason. So, but yeah, the B story with Kira and the labor and the baby, even though they bring it back at the end because she and Odo are doing a walk and talk, and she's like, I didn't want a baby, but now that I had a baby, all I want to do is have a baby. And Odo's like, well, I can't give you a baby anymore. Who knows if he could? I don't know. I'm not that much into what being a solid meant for Odo. Maybe what he could have done.
Depressed about it, so I don't know that anyone really explored what he could do.
Yeah, he should have done a little sperm donation, and then he could have given her a baby. I don't know. You know what? We're a little in the weeds on that one, so we're going to let it go and move on to our final segment. I know that Aaron was really bummed out because he wanted to talk about this episode. So Aaron, sorry. But episode 13 is For the Uniform, directed by Victor Lobel, which almost sounds like the name of one of the characters from the book that comes that they discuss. Who was the writer of that book? Victor
Hugo.
Victor Hugo was the writer of The Tale of Two. Yeah,
it wasn't
not
Tale. It's Les Miserables.
Les Miserables, which gets worked into this. But anyway, Peter Allen Fields did the writing from Feb of '97. Michael Eddington returns. Rogue Starfleet officer turned Maquis, and Sisko becomes obsessed with catching him, which I thought was a new side of. I feel like this is a new side of Sisko we saw, even though we did see when he really, probably like you or me, when he really gets into a project, he throws himself into it, like he did with the ancient city of Bahala. But he's really into making Michael Eddington pay because of the personal betrayal that he feels that we got, about a year ago in season 4, when he was hey, surprise, I'm a Maquis, and he stole those industrial replicators and ran off with them, and basically helped, basically facilitated Cassidy Yates, who we didn't mention. She did come back in the Rapture episode, so she's back in the show now. She and Sisko are still a couple, which was weird. He forgave her really quickly, but you know what? Maybe he's a bit of a softie sometimes. Who knows? But yeah, she got set up to take the fall for Eddington's theft, but she was a Maquis sympathizer anyway. But anyway, she's not really part of this episode. But this is kind of a cool cat and mouse game. It reminds me of Eddington sabotaging the Defiant. Really reminds me of a plot element that got used to death in the show 24, which I talk about quite frequently. It's one of my favorites. April and I are just finishing watching it. It ran for 9 seasons on the Fox network in the early 2000s. That, the person who was the turncoat also secretly planted a virus that makes the computer, because he does that and he disables the Defiant, which, they have to rush to fix it and still go to catch him. We get another Starfleet captain out of this. And one of the, we don't see another ship and another captain very often in DS9 because DS9 is station base, but he's played by, I'm going to forget the actor's name, but I've mentioned him before because in the television version, Eric Pierpoint, in the television version of the Fox film Alien Nation, which came out in the late 80s, in the early 90s, Eric Pierpoint played the alien character, and the human character was played by the actor who was Saval on Enterprise, whose name I'm forgetting. He recently passed away. I met him at Star Trek Las Vegas last year. He's a very nice guy, so R.I.P. But yes, you get the 2 stars of a different genre show. Both have Star Trek roots, which is not surprising. Awesome episode. Totally loved it. Love the cat and mouse stuff. Love seeing Sisko pushed to the brink. The Les Miserables references. I had a girlfriend in college who was also a Star Trek fan, and watched this with me and said, I thought the Les Miserables stuff was way over the top. And I'm like, I think it really kind of fit the bill.
Star Trek often references literature.
Right. So. Yeah, exactly. So I think that really hits the nail on the head. I will admit I've neither read the book nor seen the film, so I'm not super familiar with Les Mis.
I've read half of the book. I've seen the musical.
The musical. Musical or the film version that came out several years ago? Okay, very good.
I've seen it on stage twice, and I've seen the film.
But still haven't finished the book.
No, well, Victor Hugo is hard to read because of how he was published.
Okay.
If you're not familiar with Victor Hugo, a lot of his stuff was published in serials, more or less.
Oh, gotcha.
So he was
Okay.
paid by the word, and they would show up in chunks, and so you just had.
Oh, that is weird. And then somebody would assemble them into a book.
And then they would get assembled later.
Oh, that is
weird. So like
yeah.
each chapter or each chunk of chapter was like in a newspaper or something.
Yeah, I don't really care for that.
It makes some of his stuff harder to read
because it just doesn't connect.
It's kind of stiff, and sometimes it doesn't flow as well, and sometimes things get revisited multiple times. And
right.
It's like, I just read this like 2 pages ago.
Yeah, right. I don't much care for that.
I mean, Les Mis is a good story, and if you're familiar with it, it makes sense why Eddington would pick it.
Yeah,
in this particular interaction, because Javert is a self-righteous lawman who is completely in the wrong because he takes this very rules as written approach to the law with no leeway for circumstance or mercy.
Right, which is how Eddington paints himself.
Eddington sees Cisco.
Yeah, exactly.
And in this episode, at least, you can see some of that in Cisco. Like they play it up just a little bit so that you can see that, so you can make that connection if you're familiar with it. And Eddington claims that he's Valjean, who's like the victim, who was like unfortunately on the wrong side of the law at the wrong time because he needed to save himself and his family.
Right.
There's a lot more to it, but that's basically the gist. What's important in this episode.
Right. Yeah. Right. So, exactly.
So it's very interesting that they bring that in, and also very appropriate, because Shakespeare is quoted left, right, and center. Other books get mentioned throughout the rest of Star Trek, so it's kind of interesting that they bring in another author so front and center about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Gotcha. Very good. Yeah, great episode. Totally enjoyed what they did with it. And I do not think Les Mis was over the top. So sorry, girlfriend from college, whose name I'm drawing a blank on.
Yeah, I this was also the first time we dealt with the holographic communication device.
Which is funny because it then is a regular thing in Discovery.
It's one of the things that I have. It's one of my biggest quibbles with Discovery.
Which, you know what? I got to be honest with you. We're now a month or so past the end of Discovery, and I don't think about it at all. Discovery is kind of like an ex-girlfriend that you were obsessed with, but when you finally break up with her, you're like, I am so much better off. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm sorry. And tear me apart on our Discord or threads or Instagram if you disagree with me. But yeah, I don't miss Discovery. I know eventually, because once we do get through all of the Star Treks, we'll probably start over again. I was working on our long-term schedule recently. So we'll start again. So there will become a time, Peter, where you and I will be discussing Discovery again. And we don't need to be reminded of this conversation, but regardless, we don't love it so much. But anyway, that takes us to the end of this segment. So Peter, let's have a favorite and a least favorite before we dart back through the wormhole before our next episode.
I probably will have to say For the Uniform is my favorite.
Nice.
Just because of the interactions with Cisco and the obsession and all of that, and the literary reference, because obviously I like that one. So there's a lot of For the Uniform that's good. It deals more with the Maquis, which is something I find really interesting.
Yeah, especially since it kind of went poof. It was such a strong element of Voyager to get started because it was part of the premise of the show, but eventually it became nothing.
I think there's a line in Deep Space Nine in like season 6 where they're just like, all the Maquis are dead now, bye.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes its way over to Voyager too, and when they with the Hirogen, with the network, they finally get news back that they're all dead. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, For the Uniform would be my favorite. For the least favorite, I'm gonna probably say Rapture, just because of the Cisco freakouts.
Yeah, he's like blah. Yeah, big time.
In terms of story, I might say The Ascent, but in terms of I have a hard time rewatching this.
So it's a tie. That's the first tie we've had in a while. Usually, sometimes we struggle to be like, I can't find one I don't like. it's weird because I could string together several. Like I almost have a tie for favorite. Like the Begotten because of the father son stuff, very high with me. But I'll also tie it with let he who is without sin because of the big character development with Worf, who is Worf is our most developed character, or the character that has the most he has the most screen time of any other character. So that's a big deal. Most screen time of any character, really, even more so than Picard, because he was in several series. But as far as least favorite, I'm going to go with the Ascent. I just felt like it was buddy cop versus wacky roommate story. It seemed like you could have pulled the Star Trek out of it and it could have been just an episode of a sitcom. And I just didn't care for that.
I was about to say it could have been Seinfeld, just not.
Yeah, exactly. So I just totally didn't care for that. All right. Well, that takes us to the end of the episode. We will return with a very similar format in the next episode, where we talk another 3 episodes of Prodigy and then 6 more episodes of the 5th season of DS9. Peter, thanks as always for being my steady Eddie. I was telling somebody recently, in the nearly 4 years I've been doing the show, you have been the person who has been on with me the most. So I'm very, very grateful for you. Where do people find you out there?
You can find me around the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas. I'm not terribly active, but you could find me. I'm a little bit more active on the Discord for both the Petoskey and Secret Friends. And you can also find me on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channel. We're starting up a new game shortly, set in the late 24th century, Star Trek Adventures. And you can also find me behind the scenes on Starship Excelsior, which is dropping an episode, I think, this week.
Ooh, very exciting. Oh man, I should take a peek at that at some point. But yeah, as always, you can find me on Instagram and on Threads at the C3, TheCeeThree. I'm very, very active on 3 different Discords. Of course, our Secret Friends Unite Discord, our Grand Petoskey SFI Discord, and the United Trekkers of Michigan, which is something that April and I started up for trekkers here, largely in Michigan. Just talk about Star Trek, nothing SFI related, nothing related to anything but loving on some Star Trek. Join us at any one of those. You don't have to live in Michigan. It's not really a strict rule for me, but we would love to have you on all 3. The Petoskey one is for members of the chapter, but if you'd like to join the chapter, let us know. We can help you out. With that, as always, thank you, friends, for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.